Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Open Network User Group podcast. I'm Mark Tierney, ONUG CTO. In today's fast-paced and digitally driven landscape, businesses are constantly seeking ways to streamline operations, enhance efficiency, and drive innovation. Hyperautomation emerges as a game-changing concept, combining the strengths of artificial intelligence, machine learning, even robotic process automation, and advanced analytics. This convergence empowers organizations to automate complex processes, eliminate repetitive tasks, and unlock new levels of productivity, or so they say. So come join us as we unravel the importance of hyperautomation in the enterprise space, uncover its potential benefits and challenges, and learn from industry experts. You're going to meet them all. About how it is reshaping the future of our work. All right, so join me and my incredible guests, help you get ready to embrace the automation revolution and discover how a hyperautomation can propel your org towards unprecedented success. But first, listen, we just got done with ONUG Spring 2023. It was fantastic, but we already have our sights on ONUG Fall. It's going to be in, that's right, New York City at the Chelsea Industrial Events Center, October 24th and 25th. So come join the ONUG community of Global 2000 companies, tech execs, enterprise architects, infrastructure engineers, cloud providers, and thought leaders. So we discuss and demonstrate the tenets of enterprise cloud, networking, security. Policy is hot. The list goes on. Go to onug.net to register for the event today. Use the promo code ONUG podcast and we'll save you a truckload of cash. I think it's like 20%. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe this podcast, right? Tell your friends, tell your enemies. We don't care. Just tell them to join up and listen to what we're doing. All right. All right. So joining me today, we've got what I like to call the special working group, right? It's the hyperautomation working group. Some of the leaders from that, Brian Silverman, he is the senior architect network cloud at McKesson. He's also the co-chair of the ONUG Hyperautomation Working Group. Dale Smith, he's the founder and CMO at Orchestral. And Ken Patel, he's an associate fellow for Verizon Business Group. Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
Brian.
we're having a good time.
Good to be here.
Yeah, so this working group, Brian, I continue to be impressed by what happens, what comes out of this really high performing team. As we were approaching ONUG Spring, we were really working on, I don't know, a taxonomy doc, sort of updates to what we feel like the world looks like in our response and this team's response to hyperautomation. And the next thing you know, instead of that, we end up putting out an incredible piece of work. So let me give you the floor in a minute. Thank you, but tell us a little bit about what popped out right before we went to ONUG Spring.
Yeah, we really sort of reached some critical mass in the working group. So we had produced a taxonomy document around automation or orchestration maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was time to revisit that. And so we discussed it as a working group, but as kind of the discussions continued, we really sort of gained a tremendous amount of momentum and ended up with what we're now calling our success guide, which takes kind of the foundations of that taxonomy and just sort of blows it out and really delves wide and deep into the areas of all the different areas of hyperautomation, which is actually how we've since rebranded to kind of encompass the breadth and scale of both automation and AI and ops.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit, Dale. I've always felt, and I've potted about this before, actually, just you and I on the ONUG C-level series around hyperautomation. It does feel like sometimes, especially if you're old enough like me, to see the industry react to just a term in some cases. Gartner drops a term nearly 2 years ago now around hyperautomation. Can you unpack that a little bit? Why it's become so relevant now from your perspective?
Well, I think it's important for everybody to realize that hyperautomation, may have the perception in some quarters as being just another one of these buzzwords that come out of the IT industry pretty regularly. But I think it'd be a mistake to leave it at that. Hyperautomation really captures to Brian's earlier comment, the true breadth of opportunity available to enterprises who understand that automation, and in particular, the application of these sets of technologies that fall under the hyperautomation umbrella, application of these technologies is crucial to achieving their aspirations around transformation, agility, resiliency, competitiveness, customer experience. There's no other way to do it other than through this pathway. So although hyperautomation may have started as a Gartner-inspired buzzword, it has since then transformed into something real and tangible and strategic among organizations that recognize they've got to change. They've got to take their organizations from where they are now and prepare it for this AI wave that's coming at us like nobody's business.
Boy, it is coming at us, and Ken, sort of putting you on the spot a little bit, where from where I sit, AI is, gosh, it's pervasive. Just the term itself now is pervasive. It's such a I don't know if pivotal is the right word, integral part of hyperautomation today. What do you think from your seat? Do you see the enterprise latching onto this now? Do you think the enterprise gets where they need to go?
I think so, because one of the things that we are all struggling with, and it's a common thread across all of the IT teams, all over the world, and the forward-thinking IT teams are really saying, how do I handle my high IT cost? How do I handle my skill shortages? What kind of automation can I do? How do I handle compliance, security concerns that I have? And then how do I essentially move to the next phase where, there is automation that takes care of some of my network security, application, cloud connectivity outages? How do I simplify and remove the manual intervention that happens, which is error prone? So it's all about the experience. It's all about improving the total cost of ownership, and it's all about handling the resource constraints that we have today. And that's why I think AI is going to get itself inserted in there. Initially, it's going to get inserted at the low end, right? Automating some of the low end elements of its simpler tasks that we automate automation. And then we move into the intelligent automation. And when we combine multiple intelligent automation processes, that's when we arrive at the first step of the hyperautomation journey.
Yeah.
So we don't, we certainly haven't taken anything away from Gartner when they drop the term. They certainly do what Gartner does. They drop a lot of data, and Brian and Dale, Ken just mentioned some things that were prevalent in the 2022 study, where they're saying, look, we estimate that I'm looking at our document specifically and quoting Gartner saying 46% of IT leaders rank lowering costs among their top 3 priorities. And they feel like this is the way to get it done, or at least a big part of it, to get it done through automation and cost optimization through automation. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing out there, Dale, that supports that? What, when you're talking to customers, what of that resonates with you?
What we're seeing is a lot of pain. We're seeing a lot of pain. We're seeing companies with infrastructure that's become fragile, that's become very tenuous, that inhibits their ability to scale even their manufacturing operations, that exposes them to compliance and security risk, that exposes them to the risk of even configuration changes that are not captured properly in places where it needs to be captured. And so you end up with this configuration drift, so that what you think is the reality of your network and your infrastructure is very different from how it's actually configured. So the number of use cases is as varied as the technology stacks you find in enterprise infrastructure. So from security to even as simple as patching server farms, to application development and the DevOps CI/CD pipeline, all across the board, we're seeing a lot of pain. And what we do is we help customers kind of take a step back, really scope out the use case, and lay the foundation for methodically putting in place first an automation. Within the working group, we talk a lot about the automation journey, and where are you as far as that journey? Are you still working with scripts? Have you taken the first steps toward automating within certain silos, certain technology domains? And so what we do is we help our customers understand the full scope of that automation journey and identify those high impact use cases where there's a lot of pain to get started. And a lot of times that's designing a simple proof of concept or proof of value, as we like to refer to it, and putting in place the fundamental elements. And once we show success around that, it very quickly, the word gets out, and it very quickly migrates to some of the other departments and some of those other technology silos, where the same types of benefits can be achieved.
You touched on a couple things, Dale, that triggered something that I've thought about in other technology shifts. I mean, often we have changes in technology that allow us to do something basically that we already do, but some new tech shift allows us to do a little bit faster, maybe with a little more efficiency. But sometimes you hit a step function, right? And this is where I feel like hyperautomation and AI in particular, changes things. But I think about there's several other ONUG working groups, and what comes to mind, private 5G, and now the industry is looking at, wow, it's not just having some sort of upgrade to our wireless environment. We're talking about maybe some fundamental shifts that allow completely new use cases that we haven't been able to explore before because we didn't have the tech. And so, Brian, you've and I love putting Brian on the spot, but you've talked about some of these things like in the labs, right, or on the floor, where maybe you want to, or the business needs to create brand new efficiencies that simply weren't available on previous technologies without AI. Can you speak to that a little bit? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but
sure. No.
Do you feel like hyperautomation and maybe AI and AI ops functionality, changes the game for you in brand new ways? Not just doing something faster, but doing something completely new and different.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think actually Dale provided, as usual, kind of a great lead in, and kind of covered some very, I think, important ideas. First and foremost is this idea of maturity. So in my mind, hyperautomation is not a destination, right? It's a journey, and enterprises are all going to start from wherever they are, and some of them are much more mature. They already have good processes, good automation, use advanced technologies. Others may not, or be at kind of different areas in different technology stacks. And so what kind of the benefit of a hyperautomation mindset is that wherever you are in that maturity model, advancing that model provides value. It provides value at every level. So even if you are a unsophisticated organization, by moving in that hyperautomation direction, you are increasing value, you are providing value. So with ultimately the point to get, as you alluded to, Mark, you move away from kind of more of a, move away from some of the more infrastructure oriented use cases to actually driving business value, because you can now produce at a rate that was previously just impossible. And you can look at your environment, and instead of just seeing it as kind of infrastructure as just sort of enabling kind of the real work of the business, that hyperautomation now creates new opportunities for your business that may not have existed before. I mean, it really provides the opportunity for a real, I mean, I hate to use the term because it's been overused, but a real paradigm shift.
Yeah, it brings up the notion that before doing these sorts of things, and the paper addresses it. I keep saying paper, but it's a guide. This is what we do at ONUG. We don't.
It's a success guide.
It's a success guide, and the idea here is we put collateral in the hands of our members, and really by proxy, the community at large, ways to help them. It's not just reading material. It's an actual guide, a guide to help you improve your organization, and in this case, I think significantly. So Ken, there's a big part of what Dale and Brian both just talked about that, really has to do with taking a step back and looking at your organization, and understand, trying to understand what you might be able to do here. What's your take on, do you think organizations are ready to, take a step back and then, dig into the assessment, and how can we help them?
So yeah, great point. The organizational focus that needs to happen is not that simple and straightforward. Just like when the automation journey started, those were individual tasks that we did some workflow automation and called it automation. We got success out of it. Now it is tying those individual automation steps together, whether they were done in an internal corporation, in a pre-sales world, if they were done as we onboard customers with whatever supply chain product that we have, or in operations. But now it's all about tying all of those elements together to make a hyper automation environment. And a particular example is when you go to a business unit owner and you try to get some of these domains automated, you had difficulties once upon a time. Now the same difficulties will occur, but the best place to start to try and overcome the challenges is to go to those small successes that you had and start to expand on it. So you go to the business owner of each of the domains and see how that use case can now be flourished into combining two intelligent automation steps, so that you can now start to show a real use case. Once you show a real use case associated with that, and an ROI, a lower risk, a lower TCO, it will catch on fire. But in each of the organizations, you'll have to start very small. You have to start very methodical, just like Dale and Brian mentioned. And these are stages. The guide basically talks to you about the stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and 4. And each of these are talking about how do you get from that first step to a wonderful step of a successful use case. Second thing is cultural shift. That cultural shift will be needed. Silos are not breaking down that easily. There are going to be challenges here also. So when you try to tie two systems together, two business units together, and you try to get those two intelligent processes together, you're going to have all of those kind of things. So breakpoints will be needed when you tie, two separate elements together. But each of those is going to contain that cultural shift mindset, the governance models that we typically have. But start small, do not boil the ocean is what the opposite side of it is, and then start to begin showing that success and ultimately, it is all about automating things so that we get to what Brian mentioned, which is a success story that has, fewer manual errors. Dale mentioned about configuration errors. All of those are occurring today. We don't even know that they're happening today. And sometimes we know about it too late a stage when the cost has been incurred already. So it is a break point that you have to get to and start to build those individual use cases across the organization and start these projects individually.
On my run sheet here, guys, I have a bullet point that says what's in the way of successful implementations. And that's in so many of my discussions with people. And usually at the top of that list is some sort of cultural thing. And I want to live in a world where that's gone. Is it just my naivete? Am I kidding myself, Brian? And Dale, is this always going to be a problem, or are we finally going to get to a point one day where everyone's going to be ready to embrace change? Are we getting close at all?
Well, I think our only salvation is the prospect that success is contagious. To Ken's point, maybe you wouldn't be amazed at how important the cultural, organizational culture plays into the success of an automation initiative. And I think one of the things that's important for folks to keep in mind about the ONUG Hyperautomation Working Group is that we're cognizant of that. What we really try to do is help our members, our participants, connect the dots, not just between the technology and the business impact, but also the implementation dimension. Whether it's forming a center of excellence and bringing all those stakeholders together so that this becomes not the hyperautomation initiative isn't some science project, in a particular department, but gets the attention of the executive level so that it becomes a top-down, not only north-south, but east-west initiative. And I think that's how organizations will achieve the true potential of what's implied by this term hyperautomation.
Brian, one of the things I like about the guide, the success guide, is, and Dale's just touched on a little bit, and building off Ken's point, there's this notion that we've got potentially big wins, and wins, but there's also wins that we want to build on too. And I don't know how you might be approaching these things, but from I generally wear a customer advocate hat in my role at ONUG, and I always look at these new techs from two perspectives: the advocate from the inside who knows this tech is going to work, right? And there's a story we tell there, and then there's the aspect of I got to sell this tech to somebody in the C-suite, likely, right, or certainly product people. Whatever, but I better be hitting on one of these pillars: cost, security, business value, time to market, customer experience, eliminating technical debt. Like, if I'm not hitting one of those 5 things, I don't have a story at the C-suite level or any hope of getting some new tech in. Am I right or wrong, Brian? Are you still seeing it this way, or are you telling different stories now?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, ultimately, of course, it all comes down to value, business value, right? I mean, we as IT professionals, we are here to serve the business, serve to serve the company. That's how we provide and show value. So I totally agree on that front, and I do think that, culture. There are a million cliches about culture, but culture cannot be underestimated. And so I think if you are in one of those organizations that is more resistant and more conservative, I think that's okay. I think you just start with small successes and build. Then again, you may be part of an organization that, loves to take chances and loves, is very technology forward. And so you may be able to take a much bigger swing. I don't think there's any lack of enthusiasm for hyperautomation, especially when you talk about it in the context of AI ops. But again, it really comes back down to delivering that value. And I think that whether that's that's a small value or a big value, that has with that you have an opportunity to build momentum, and that is really what you're after. So even if it's a tiny little piece of improvement, someone's going to be excited about that, and then they're going to become an advocate. Okay, well, you do it again, and you can do it again, and you do it again, and then you've got momentum, and then you have advocates out there talking about how beneficial this process has been, kind of this mindset has been.
All right, let me ask the tough
Mark,
question.
Just to interrupt you here, the point that Brian mentioned really is in chapter 4. If you use the success guide and review it, how do you identify those high impact use cases? What is the criteria for selecting it? What are some example high impact use cases? Between this hyperautomation team, we had a deep discussion on what are those high impact use cases that will result in quick win and long-term value. And then how do you prioritize those use cases based on ROI, which gets to the business value point? So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to mention that there's a perfect direct reference into the guide on that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you went there. That's where I wanted to go anyway. So let me just I'll now start making, as usual, part of my charm is making bold assertions, right? So let's just go there. We talk about maybe making some or getting some small wins, right? And then maybe some big wins, and with high impact, maybe there's some smaller things with high impact. I don't know, but let me just say that there's no, I'm going to make the statement and someone needs to knock me off. There's no hyperautomation without AI. And so there's no hyperautomation without an AI strategy. There's no hyperautomation without having your data squared away. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're absolutely right. Go ahead, Phil.
I would say yes. I would largely agree with that, except for the fact that we have this maturity model, and the AI is the turbocharger on the right side of that model. Once you have gotten your organization through those early stages of first automating within a single domain, so that might be relative to security use cases. It might be relative to virtualization use cases. The next step is how do I orchestrate? And so which means how do I tie together automations that might otherwise reside within a single technology domain so that an entire workflow can occur. Onboarding a new employee, for example. They've got to be entered into certain applications. The authentication and security rules have to be set up for them to access the firewall and the external networks. So there are a number of systems, even for that simple use case of onboarding a new employee. So once I've got all of that in place, then I can begin to look at how does AI take me to the next level. Now, to your point, you should have an AI strategy in place before you get to that point. It's the turbocharger, but that's how you really achieve, the ultimate potential and promise of hyperautomation. So certainly AI is absolutely in the mix, but people shouldn't come away feeling bad because they don't have AI ops in place yet. It takes some foundational steps to get to that point.
So this is a testament, quite frankly, Brian, a testament to the work that the O&A team, the original orchestration automation team, did to begin with, right? Is building that maturity model, understanding where you live in that taxonomy and getting those underpinnings in place. But I'll always wave the flag though. If you don't have an AI strategy and the data strategy that goes with it, you're missing the opportunity, and sooner or later you're going to get asked why. Brian.
Yeah, I mean, these things are all about, I mean, all of these things build value on your journey to hyperautomation. You are building value along the way. If you are then building an AI strategy in parallel, you are building value along the way, and one improves and feeds the other. I mean, your AI strategy is going to need to include, sources of truth and defined processes and standards. All of these things are also needed for your hyperautomation journey. So these things all build on each other. And again, that's why I go back to this maturity model. It is about, it is the North Star. It is not a destination. But you keep driving value as you move along, as you walk that path.
All right, I'm going to wrap us up. And we're going to go around the horn. Ken, I'll start with you, okay? Because I know you're anxious to talk, right? So, how about a favorite section of the success guide? Anything that you want to, specifically draw attention to for our members?
So I really think that the whole how do you begin is the best part of it, which really gets to chapter 3, which is developing that hyperautomation strategy, and then rolls right into the high impact use cases. If you focus on those two things and start to think deeply on how do you do that and unfold it, uncover it, develop it for your organization, for your department, for a particular business unit, I think you'll start to understand how deep it needs to go. And one of the biggest things will be, how do I collect the data so that I can run some AI associated with that particular business use case that you come up with first?
I like that a lot. Dale, how about you, buddy?
Oh, certainly. I think it's important I like Ken's choice of chapters 3 and 4. I think it's also important for the membership and the audience here to realize that our success guide is intended to be a living document. So it's in great shape now, but the best thing that folks can take away from this conversation is to get involved, to come and join the ONUG Hyperautomation Working Group, and bring your use cases with you, and help us make this an even better living document than it already is. Nice. Brian, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I have a hard time topping either of those two answers. So I'll just sort of maybe echo them a bit. So what's been really terrific about working on the document is that it has been truly a collaborative effort, and you have kind of the mind share of dozens of people, and it is living. And so this is a very rapidly evolving environment and market, and so we will continue to challenge ourselves, but also look to be challenged by others in the community to make sure that this is kind of this collection of information is as useful as it possibly can be. And so we welcome everybody to come and join us.
Yeah, I love it. There's no dirty laundry to air here. It's all about collaboration. And I say that with the full disclosure that we're trying to do a much better job at ONUG and the collab in sharing information between the different working groups that are up. I shared this document with the cloud native security team. They loved it. They're stealing the format for it. And then they turned around and said, we want to get involved and add some more security to the success guide. And so, that's what's going to happen. So this is just the power of collaboration. And listen, you guys have a lot to be proud of in putting this work out. I'm going to give a little special shout out to Dale, who really took a very strong leadership role in this, but everyone's contributed. Ken, thank you for your leadership as well. So with that, to everyone's point here, get involved, go to onug.net today and look into joining the collaborative. And on behalf of the ONUG community, I want to thank my guests today, Brian, Ken, and Dale, for being with me. And we'll see everybody on the next ONUG podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay.